Alli, I'm exercising like never before. I'm working out really hard. Why am I not losing weight?
In this podcast, we're going to discuss why you shouldn't exercise as a weight loss tool. Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey. Alli, how many times have you heard women say, what I'm doing doesn't work anymore? I'm exercising. I'm gaining weight. Like, what's going on? Is that common for you?
Oh yeah, I definitely hear this one a lot. And we're wondering why. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything differently. I'm just going about my day. And I feel like I'm eating the same. I feel like I'm doing the same amount of exercise. However, I'm either stuck or maybe even gaining weight. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that is not a fun place when you feel like that you're doing all the right things.
So let's qualify a little bit about, our teaser when we said we shouldn't be using exercise as a weight loss tool. Because, even before we jumped on the podcast, we had it out, you and I, because I'm like, oh, we're exercising for fun and function. You're like, anything you move, that's exercise. Right. So let's qualify that a little bit.
Yeah. So what we're talking about today is N.E.A.T, and that is it depends on how we look at N.E.A.T, and there's definitions of N.E.A.T and all these little things that we do on the regular that are not exercise related. That is considered N.E.A.T. But one of the things that Shawna and I had in our little discussion is that can be different for different people. So I may be doing something that's very regular to me that I don't consider exercise, but someone else, that could be really strenuous for them, depending on their fitness level, their endurance, their stamina. So we kind of, I guess, came to a little conclusion that can look a little different for different people. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about N.E.A.T and how neat it is and what it is, Shawna?
Yeah, so just N.E.A.T is actually an acronym for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So it is considered all the movements in the day that you're doing that are not necessarily exercise. And so the argument, we really had it out, that we had at the beginning was, Alli, you said somebody, your dad, delivers batteries and picks those up out of a vehicle and delivers them, and they're heavy. So would that be considered exercise? And I said, when I was defining N.E.A.T, I was saying, okay, when you're doing laundry and folding socks, is that considered exercise? So, if the exercise is strenuous for you, then yeah, that's going to be considered more movement, more in the exercise bucket. But probably for the majority of our listeners, folding socks or putting underwear in drawers, putting laundry away, you're moving, but that's probably not going to be considered exercise. Does that make sense? Did I define it?
Yeah. So let's give some example. You gave some, like folding clothes, folding socks. It can be walking from here to there, getting up, going to the bathroom, just getting up. If I drink more water, my N.E.A.T is going to go up because I'm going to be making more trips to the bathroom, to and back from the bathroom. And so I will be burning more calories because of those extra steps I'm taking. Chasing kids can be, if you have a toddler and you're moving around, getting on the floor, playing with them, cleaning the house, gardening. What are some other examples that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, you've covered a lot of them. Mostly, like, my definition includes the activity that you're doing in your day that's outside your exercise window. So, the beauty of N.E.A.T is that if you're up for 16 hours a day, you could be doing N.E.A.T at some point during each of those hours. And we just did the math that if you were exercising, like having an actual workout for an hour a day, 7 days a week, which is very intense, that's a lot of working out. That's really only 4% of your total weekly time. But when you consider that you've got 100, if say you slept 8 hours a day, you have 112 hours in the week to be doing some kind of N.E.A.T. And that means, like, lots of us have desk jobs, or, you're sitting for lots of parts of the day. but every hour you could be getting up and moving. And it's that low energy expenditure, but the quantity of it over time really adds up to for calorie burning. And so that is that, as well as calorie deficit or addressing nutrition. Those are your two best fat loss tools if weight loss is your goal. That's kind
Yeah.
of what we're getting at, right?
Yes. And can we talk about why that's important? Because our podcast is Girls Talk Healthy Aging. So how does that fit into healthy aging? How does NEAT over the years affect our aging?
Well, I mean, we kind of started with the teaser of like, I'm working out really hard, or I'm doing things all the same,
Mm.
and things are happening. And you brought up the example of like, hey, you're chasing kids, and the fact that when you stop chasing kids, your calorie burn, your total calorie burn goes down over time. And so as that happens, you know, you may think, hey, I'm doing everything all the same, but you may be gaining weight. And weight gain is associated with, less, you're not as healthy when you're not at your ideal weight. So even if you put on only 1 pound a month, that's 12 pounds a year.
Mm.
That adds up over 10 years. You can see how you can easily be putting on weight. Now, let's compound that with menopause, where what happens is that we have age-related muscle decline related to loss of estrogen. And our muscle is our metabolic furnace. So the less muscle we have on our body, the less calorie burning capacity we have. So it's exponential when we first of all become more sedentary, and secondly, because of estrogen loss, we tend to lose our metabolic fire with our muscle. So we
Mm.
just become less functional, and like, our health outcomes become poorer. And muscle also helps our insulin sensitivity. So insulin helps us manage our carbohydrates and energy balance more efficiently. So when we can't manage our carbohydrates, hey, we're going to be becoming metabolically unwell, or we're going to be gaining visceral fat, gaining weight. So all those health outcomes become poor. So our goal is to remind you how to offset this. And we're not telling you to run a marathon. We're saying that it's very easy with
Mm.
some awareness.
And this has compounded the lack of NEAT or the decline of NEAT. You mentioned menopause. Our modern
Oh my
society
gosh. Yeah.
is also a huge contributor
Yeah.
to our NEAT, our non-exercise activity, going down. And it's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically our body's ability to burn calories and using heat to burn calories. If we're driving to the store versus walking to the store, I
Yeah.
just did a consult with a potential client who just moved from DC to Macon, Georgia. And Macon, Georgia, we drive everywhere. And she walked everywhere in DC. And just in 3 weeks, it has affected her. We talked about how mentally it has affected her. She
Yeah.
does not feel as good mentally, as sharp. She
Yeah.
just mood and all those things. And then also physically getting more sluggish, more tired. And then tying what you talked about with menopause, and one of the things with the thing that you talked about with muscle loss is when we lose muscle, when we get weaker, we don't want to move as much. It's that much
Yeah.
harder, because when I'm weaker, everything's harder. Lifting
Yeah.
something, if I'm losing muscle, it's harder. So that's going to encourage me to decrease my
Yeah.
need even more. And so
Yeah.
we really have to override our body. We have to override our modern technology, and we
Yeah.
have to override the things happening with hormone changes. And it may take some effort. How can people, what are some ways, some things that, so we can be as healthy as we age as possible, as our bodies are changing, especially for our ladies that are going through menopause? What are some ways, that suggestions, if you have some, that would help us to override all those things and kind of fight that uphill battle? What are some
Yeah.
neat things that we can do?
Yeah. Well, it can be very simple by creating awareness. And we were just talking about like Apple Watches, Fitbits, just kind of getting a sense of, okay, how many steps am I doing? And
Mm-hmm.
just increasing those. And, we all hear that 10,000 steps is a worthy goal in a day. And honestly, I'm not getting that like on the regular. We talked about this because I had a fitness boot camp where I was coaching a lot and now I coach more online. So I have to be, I could have been a victim of like gaining lots of weight because I went from, many, many steps. I didn't have an Apple Watch at the time and I wasn't necessarily counting them, but I get less than 10,000 steps. Um, because I'm more sedentary. I kind of have a desk job, so I have to be more aware. So, after our podcast, Alli, I'm out and I go for a walk. Like I have to be very purposeful in getting movement. I had another client, she works from home, and so many people I've talked to, thank you, COVID, lots of people are working from home, which is like seemingly on the outside, like, wow, what a bonus. But people are noticing, hey, I'm not walking from my car park. My bathroom is only 10 steps away and not down the hall or not down 3 flights of stairs. Or so people noticeably get less NEAT. So my client said, how can I get 10,000 steps a day working in a small apartment from home? I said, you have to be very conscious of it. It's kind of like with food logging or balancing a budget, you have to look at the numbers. So there's a couple ways you can just, you can have like a device like Apple Watch, Fitbit. If you have the free app, My Fitness Pal, on your phone and put that in your pocket, it counts your steps. And it doesn't matter if they're entirely accurate. What matters is that they're ballpark. And say you're only getting 2,000 steps a day. It's not realistic for you to say, hey, I'm going to get 10,000 steps a day starting now. But
Right.
if you're getting 4,000 steps a day as opposed to 2, hey, that's
Right.
that's an improvement, right? And so just
Tracking knowledge of what you're doing, getting the baseline,
yeah,
whether it's accurate or not, it gives you a baseline. Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
you
and I don't want to I want to clarify that we both agree that exercise can be a tool for fitness or weight loss, but it's really not the best one. We really do uh, my opinion is that we want to exercise for all the benefits that exercise brings us, particularly resistance training, for fun, for function, to offset all the, things that happen to us when we age, like bone loss and muscle loss and cardiovascular loss that
and
can be
affect our
addressed.
ability, those things affect our ability to NEAT as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
It keeps us functional and but so we definitely want to be doing that. But I really like the stat that even if you're exercising an hour a day, that's only 4% of your week.
Yes, yeah. And so we feel like we're doing so much. We go in there and
Yeah.
if we're hopping on a treadmill and
Yeah.
we're doing that an hour a day, we're like, I'm exercising so much, but then I'm sitting at a desk the rest of the day and sitting in front of the TV and watching Netflix. That's just not going to be enough to make a dent in it. And one of the things that you brought up is, it can also increase your hunger if you're like putting, especially going all intense. You've been sitting and then you go all intense into exercise. That can even affect your hunger level. So if you are not feeling appropriately and you're over exercising for what fits you and where you're at in your journey, that can also throw off your results.
Yeah. Oh, yes, because there are studies that actually equate, hey, beginner exercisers, with their goal of losing weight, they actually find that they're gaining weight, and it's because they have an increase in appetite. And so that could be addressed quite easily with food choices. But if you're uninformed about nutrition, so we kind of just want to caution people that, hey, weight loss, yes, can be achieved. And oftentimes people in the beginning of exercise notice, body composition or changes to their physique. But over time, if nutrition isn't addressed, that it can go in the opposite direction, just because appetite is increased, depending on the type of exercise you're doing and your body composition in the beginning, right?
Right. And then, and also we're talking about weight loss, which is different from fat loss. And so that's another thing I think to take into this is that, sometimes people's are, well, typically if they're doing resistance training, they're also going to be gaining muscle too. So, that's going to affect your weight on the scale. Yeah. And so there's so many factors that play into this. One of the things that I love that we're talking about this, because that one of the misconceptions is that I can just out exercise,
Yes.
whatever. I can just out exercise it. But we have 168 hours in a week, and you just can't out exercise all those hours if you're sitting and not moving and not getting any NEAT. So the more you can increase your NEAT, it's definitely going to be easier to get more hours of that than
And to increase your exercise.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I cannot spend, I can move a little bit every hour or get some, go and fold more clothes and walk from here to there to yonder, but I can only stay on a treadmill so long and walk especially at a fast pace, and up an incline, and that's just going to be limited in as far as what I can do. And so this is one of those things that I love that we're talking about, because it's something that I think NEAT is something it's so neat, and most people have never even heard of it, or don't even think about all the things that we do that are getting us moving, even fidgeting. People that fidget burn more calories than people that don't fidget. Like I'm sitting talking with my hands. You can't see me if you're listening to this podcast just on audio, but I talk with my whole body. My legs are moving, my hands are moving. So I'm getting some NEATs, and I'm standing while I'm doing this too. So instead of sitting, but so I'm getting some NEAT in right now while I'm talking to you all. It all adds up.
Well, and I really encourage my clients. Yes, I want them to get a workout in, but especially during times of high stress. Stress is associated with cortisol. Cortisol is associated with increased belly fat. And then so everyone demonizes cortisol. No, we need cortisol, but we just don't need an abundance or too much cortisol. So if you're experiencing, for example, a time of high stress, then a really hard workout also can increase cortisol. That's just how it works. And so you're getting a sympathetic nervous response. And so rather than further increasing cortisol with more stress on your body, because that workout is viewed in your body as stress, it probably is more beneficial for you to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest nervous system, so that it decreases cortisol. So parasympathetic nervous response could be elicited from a walk, gardening, yoga, playing with the dogs, like something more meditation. Like, well, I guess you're not really moving when you're meditating, but there is walking meditation, but just easy movement. And that is probably going to be more healthy for you than just a hard-hitting workout day after day when you're already under a lot of stress, probably not sleeping, which also increases cortisol. So and menopause can kind of throw the cortisol balance off as well. So walking is a great parasympathetic nervous response stimulator. So from that aspect, because the majority of people that that I work with, women over 40, we don't necessarily gain more weight, but we gain it in a specific spot, which is the belly. So cortisol also is going to encourage belly fat storage. So by exercising nonstop, those long workouts are not going to help you decrease that belly fat.
Right. And honestly, even I mean, NEAT may not do it all either. So the best way is to do a
The
combination.
combination.
Yes. So we need to change our eating and change our needs, how much we're moving throughout the day. And
Yeah.
then also getting our exercise in to build our muscle tone so that we can be more functional and we can move and we have the strength to do all the things that
Yeah.
we want to do. And we are building that metabolic tissue in our bodies to help fight that extra fat. So really doing all three of those. And you were talking about, and I think this is something that we just don't realize, and you talked about tracking, but clients and ourselves included, myself, at times we have changes to our NEAT, but we don't really
Even notice it.
don't notice it. One, because we don't think about NEAT, it's not talked about. So we don't even consider it because we just think it's exercise or nothing. Like we don't know that there's this whole other area. So you were sharing an example with
Yeah.
me earlier of a client that didn't recognize and you recognized it. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just a teacher client who, normally is getting, 12 to 15,000 steps a day working with primary children. Summers off, great. Working a little bit harder at resistance training, which is fantastic because she has a little bit more energy to put into that. But her steps are like not even a half, more like a quarter of what she would be doing during the working year. So 4 pounds, she was really befuddled, like, where did this come from? And I said, well, look, your expenditure is down. And honestly, her appetite was down as well because she wasn't burning as much, but she was still eating in a surplus, comparatively speaking, to what she was doing when she was getting those 12 to 15,000 steps a day. That's a lot of steps, 5 days a week. So, but she didn't really notice because everybody seems to notice, oh, I'm working out, I'm not working out. It's all or nothing kind of thing, right?
Yep.
And so having the all or something, like, hey, I'm not going to work out, but I'm going to move. I'm going to do some NEAT, or I'm going to just make sure that I'm, just putzing about the house, not just laying on the couch. And people might not notice when they're not doing that putzing around. And so it's important to kind of quantify and so that's why sometimes those apps that track your steps can be helpful. And I even have some, two of my clients are sisters, and between the two sisters, they always have a competition as to who can get the most steps in the day. And so sometimes if one goes to bed earlier, the other looks at, they have the sharing app. So they're like, oh, I can get another couple of hundred steps in and beat them. So I really like that,
Yeah. Yeah. Those friendly competitions. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but just being
data.
aware.
And I think going back to like data, if you do have a way, like you said, there's free ways to do it on your phone.
Yeah.
And also, like, I know I measure clients, because, again, that client that you had, she also picked up resistance training. So some of the weight she gained, was it from her adding resistance training? And then she also was obviously moving less. So,
Yeah.
looking at all the data really helps to really discern what's going on with what's going on with these bodies of ours that we live in,
Yeah.
versus just looking at the scale and making a decision.
That's what I was going to say. And not just making your decision based on what the number on the scale says, because we need to take measurements, look in the mirror, try on our clothes, and use the scale, like use all the tools in the toolbox.
All the data is so important. Love the data. All of it. Well, that was such a neat thing to talk about today.
I was going to say, what is your wish for people that have listened to our NEAT is Neat podcast?
My wish is for folks to just kick up their NEAT and move more, even if they're watching TV, fidget, get up and down, do something. It all adds up. It all adds up. So that's my wish.
Well, and my wish is that people can get outside to get some NEAT, because not only are you getting the movement in, but you're getting the benefit of the sunlight, especially for those morning and the evening walks, because that helps to set your circadian rhythm. And there's just something about fresh air that is going to help with sleep. And, you know, I know lots of my clients struggle with that. And so we're always going to be feeling better when we are more rested. And so getting our NEAT outside is a double whammy, a double win.
Love it. Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.